So I want to show you how I make this trance lead right here. A few years ago, I made a tutorial on how to create a new kind of supersaw that doesn't use unison detuning. Instead, it uses chaos or noise modulation to modulate the pitch. And at a really high rate, you get this sort of fuzzy, bright, screamy kind of detuned sound. And I figured out another way to do it really easy and doesn't use Serum. You just use Operator in Ableton. And I really am excited to share this. This is also how it sounds soloed. I got a filter macro and detune. So let me remake this. I'm just gonna use the same MIDI and solo this. I'm gonna use an operator and then set the wave to saw. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to set the voices to 1 to make it monophonic, and then set the pitch bend range to 12. So in order to get this detuned sound, it's actually really simple. You enable the LFO, set it to sample and hold, and by default, it'll sound like this when I turn the amount up. It sounds ridiculous. It's just modulating the pitch in random steps. I could turn the rate up all the way, but it's still not fast enough. The trick is to set the mode from low to high, and then that makes this LFO frequency rate up to 12.5 kilohertz in modulation. So I could turn this rate all the way up and check out what it does. It makes it really kind of unstable and gives it this noisy texture. Then the next thing, I'm going to increase the spread by 1%. What the spread does is it offsets the pitch of the left and right channels very slightly. If I increase it all the way, it's going to create like a detuning effect in both channels. But if I set it to just 1%, it's actually not really going to change the pitch much at all of the actual oscillator, but it's going to offset the random sample and hold rate to really make it super stereo. So now there's this noise modulation, but there are basically two separate noise signals that are independently modulating the left and right channels pitch. So the next thing that I do is set the LFO. I will bypass the destination A for the LFO, and I'll have B, let me set B's level to 6, and I'll also set that to a saw wave, and then I'll bring the course up 1, so it's at 2, so it's an octave higher. And then when I play it, you get this sound. Whoa. Actually, I have to set this to parallel mode so that all of these oscillators are not modulating each other. So now you're getting this like old school kind of trancey effect. This is what I was using for a while, but I found that I can actually enable the destination of the LFO to modulate the pitch of oscillator A. And you get this detuning in tandem. The trick is to bypass the phase restart of each of these oscillators. Now it doesn't sound too great right now, but if I group this and then copy this operator out 4 times, I'm just going to put a multi-band compressor at the end of this just to compress it. You get this super dense, really bright, airy kind of lead sound. And what I can then do is macro the amount and then map to all siblings. So now this kind of functions as the detune. And it sounds like there's so many more voices than there actually is. There's really only 8 total. And then another thing you can do is enable oscillator C. You can make this minus 12 dB, set that to saw, and then have the destination of the LFO bypassed on oscillator C, and that creates this direct saw signal. So I'm just going to copy the value to siblings making sure that it is a saw wave, and then also the bypassing the destination. So now that there's a solid saw wave that's being played that's not detuned within this, and then there are the two really detuned saw waves, or the noise modulated saw waves that are layered in. That direct saw that's unmodulated just gives it a little bit more of a solid sound. And then I like to post-process this with some reverb. I like to use hybrid reverb on quartz mode. Cut out some of the lows. And then I like to add a delay. Doing like, yeah, this is probably fine. And then the other thing I like to do is enable the filter. I'm going to turn the resonance off and then set it to 12 dB per octave, and then copy that to siblings. And then I can map the frequency to another macro. And I'm also going to do the same thing. Here, let me map to siblings. And I'm also going to do the same thing with the envelope. Let's just set that to 50% so we can get like a nice pluck going on. Copy value to siblings. Oh yeah, and then copy the value of the resonance being 0 to the siblings. I mean, yeah, it's just pretty awesome in my opinion. Super simple. You really just set up this noise modulation and then duplicate the operators out. You also don't need this second octave. You could bypass these and then just have it just a single octave. It's also a really nice sound. This works great for chords as well. I have these chords here, and I'm just gonna use the MIDI and then set this to from voices from 1 to 20, and then let me just delete these because I can't map to siblings, can't copy that value to siblings, and then just duplicate it out again, and now I have basically a chord stack. And maybe I don't want that direct, unmodulated saw in there, so I'll bypass that, copy to siblings. Yeah, so that's how I make this trance lead / chord stack synth. I like to call this the spirit lead or the spirit stack because there's an old school synth called Gladiator that had this detune mode that basically did this. It wasn't just a simple detuning, static detuning of the different unison voices, but rather it used a noise modulation source to detune each of the voices separately, and it created this really huge sound that really otherwise you can only get if you stack an absurd amount of unison detuned voices. This is way more CPU friendly, and the fact that it is made with operator just makes it super easy. It's a really low bar of entry to get a really high quality, dense, trancey sound without using synths like Serum or Dune or Sylenth or Spire or any of those other paid for trance or virtual analog synths. So yeah, this is the Spirit stack or Spirit lead, and I hope you enjoy.